Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so did you know that a towering redwood tree can literally pull water hundreds of feet into the air without a single moving part or mechanical pump? It's pretty mind-blowing. If you're a focused learner gearing up for your O-level biology exams, well, you're in exactly the right place today. We're going to completely unlock the hidden mechanics of plant transportation. There's this fascinating, completely invisible world operating inside every single leaf and stem, and grasping exactly how it works is absolutely crucial for your exam success. Let's get right into it. Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We're breaking this down into 5 parts. First, the plant highway system. Second, the xylem. Third, the phloem. Fourth, we'll look at how transpiration pull is generated. And finally, we'll cover the most common mistakes you definitely want to avoid. So to kick things off, let's think about this. Plants actually have their very own secret highway system. Think about it like a bustling city. A city absolutely needs roads to transport food and supplies to its citizens, right? Well, a plant is no different. It relies on a really intricate hidden network of biological highways just to survive. We're going to start with a macro view of this incredible system, and then we'll zoom way in to see the microscopic mechanics. Starting with Section 1, the plant highway system, taking a macro look. You might have heard of the famous ringing experiment. It's a classic study that physically demonstrated something amazing. If you remove an outer ring of a plant's stem, it completely disrupts the plant's ability to transport its manufactured food. That actually proved the existence of distinct directional highways inside the stem. If you look at the screen, notice how we've split the view. On the left, you've got the whole macro plant, and on the right, a transparent microscopic cutaway. That right there is the vascular system. And if you look closely at the labels, you can see the 2 main tissues clearly separated from each other, the xylem and the phloem. These are those internal highways we're talking about. They run parallel to each other, but they do completely different jobs. Let's move to Section 2 and talk about the first of those tissues, the xylem, which is the water route. Look at those thick arrows pointing straight up on the diagram. That's because the xylem acts strictly as a one-way street. Its one and only job is to transport water and dissolved mineral salts straight upward. We're talking from the roots down at the very bottom of the plant, all the way up to the leaves at the top. The flow goes in just one single vertical direction. There is absolutely no going back down in the xylem. To see exactly how it manages this, let's zoom in on the thick walls of these tubes. You'll notice the xylem is made up of long, hollow tubes formed entirely out of dead cells. But here is the really crucial adaptation to pay attention to. See that outer structural layer we've highlighted? That is lignin. You can think of lignin like the structural rebar you'd use to reinforce concrete. Because water is being constantly pulled up with some seriously intense fluid pressure, these hollow, dead cells would literally just collapse inward on themselves if they didn't have the rigid support of the lignin holding the walls wide open. All right, moving on to Section 3, the phloem, which acts as the plant's food network. Now, unlike that strictly one-way street we just looked at, the phloem is a bidirectional highway. Check out the flow vectors on the screen. You'll see arrows pointing both up and down. That's because the phloem's job is to distribute the plant's manufactured food. Specifically, we're talking about sugars and amino acids that get created up in the leaves. The phloem has to ship those down to the roots, buried deep underground, but also up to any growing shoots at the very top of the plant. Let's look at the micromechanics here. The phloem has some completely different adaptations compared to the xylem. For starters, the phloem is very much alive. You can clearly spot the sieve tube cells. Think of those as the literal paved roads where the food actually travels. But right next to them, and notice the little energy icons popping up here, are the companion cells. Transporting this dense, syrupy food mixture actually requires active, living energy. So you can kind of picture these companion cells as biological 24-hour drive-thrus, directly pumping the required power right into the sieve tubes to keep all that traffic moving. Okay, let's lock all of this in with a rigorous head-to-head comparison. Think of this table on the screen as your ultimate exam cheat sheet. On the left side, we have the xylem, strictly one way, carries water and minerals, made of dead cells, and reinforced with lignin. Now over on the right, the phloem, totally bidirectional, carries manufactured food and sugars, made of living cells, and relies on that dynamic team of sieve and companion cells. Visually tracking these stark differences side by side like this is, for sure, the single most efficient way to get this permanently mapped in your memory. On to Section 4, generating transpiration pull. So what exactly is the invisible engine powering this whole upward water system? Let's track this step by step through the flowchart. Watch as the steps light up. Step 1. It all starts right at the top. Water evaporates from the leaves into the surrounding air. Now moving to step 2. As that water leaves, notice the tension gradient forming. It creates a negative pressure. It's essentially acting like a biological vacuum right at the top of the tubes. And finally, step 3. This negative pressure acts as a really powerful suction, physically pulling the next continuous chain of water molecules straight upward through the xylem, starting all the way down at the roots. So evaporation drives the pressure, and the pressure drives the pull. Almost done. Section 5. Common mistakes to avoid. Let's make sure you don't lose any of those vital marks on your exams.
See that big red X on the screen? That's marking a crucial trap. Do not fall into these. Pitfall number 1 is simply mixing up the cargo. Always anchor xylem to water and minerals and anchor phloem to food. Pitfall number 2 is a huge one when it comes to spatial memory. A lot of students assume that because water goes up, food must naturally only go down. Incorrect. As those dual arrows remind us, the phloem is completely bidirectional. It moves food everywhere the plant needs it, both up and down. Let's look at how this actually shows up on a test. Here's a very common exam question. What is the name for the transport system in plants? When you see this, you can confidently recall that overarching umbrella term we defined at the very beginning of the explainer. The answer is the vascular system, which inherently encompasses both the xylem and the phloem working together as one unit. Let's do a second worked example. Through what process is transpiration pull generated in a plant? If you trace back to that 3-step flowchart we just covered, you have to identify the physical trigger. The answer is the evaporation of water from the leaves. That evaporation is what directly creates the negative pressure, fundamentally generating that massive upward pull through the xylem. Okay, let's rapidly fire through our final recap points to perfectly outline your mental diagram. The total vascular system equals xylem plus phloem. The xylem equals one-way water movement and structural support via lignin. The phloem equals bidirectional manufactured food distribution. And lastly, transpiration pull is the evaporation fueled engine driving all that upward water movement. Now, here's my final challenge to you before we wrap up this explainer. Grab a blank piece of paper and literally draw it out. Based on the vectors, the scales, and the cross-sections we visualized today, can you map the exact direction of water and food right now completely from memory? Test yourself. Differentiate these tissues clearly on the page. And once you master this, you kind of have to wonder, if plants can engineer a structural highway system this flawless, how do they defend it when hunger bugs try to tap into their food supply? Well, that is a mystery for another time. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.